Oh, good Lord. Can you believe it? We're back at the final drive on the R1200GS. So I need to make a follow-up video to the video that I made a few weeks ago that became very popular on YouTube, which was lubing the splines of the final drive. So the reason I'm making the follow-up video is because there's a few things that I missed that a lot of you out there who are really experienced with this were kind enough to point out in the comments. The first thing is that the type of grease used for the splines themselves. I was advised by a few people that actually BMW wants you to use a moly assembly paste. So this is the stuff that you're supposed to use. Now you don't have to use a Honda, but what you want to use is a molybdenum assembly paste. What it is it's a concentrated molybdenum type grease. So the grease that I used in the other video, the synthetic grease with moly fortified, is a very small percentage of moly. And what I was advised is because of the high pressure and the heat and things like that, and for the longevity, it's better to use a moly assembly paste. So there's 5 or 10 different brands of this, but do your research and make sure you're getting a moly assembly paste. I went with this Honda one because frankly Amazon had it and it was easy for me to get. So we're gonna relube with this, but there's a few other things. Now first, I apologize for looking ridiculous in these clothes, but I'm getting oily and greasy, so I'm obviously not gonna wear nice clothes, so I hope you forgive me for that. The other things are that you guys correctly pointed out that I didn't show you how to change the final drive oil itself. So we're going to do that today as well. You really should do that before you go in to tackle the splines, because when you drop the final drive down, it's going to drain out the speedo sensor hole anyway. So it's something you want to do. It's an easy job. I'll show you how to do it. And a third reason is the boot here is supposed to be greased, I guess, to help prevent water intrusion. So the water intrusion, speaking of that, I think that's one of the reasons why these things are getting rusty prematurely, is because water seems to be able to get in here and start rusting the surfaces. Now, how big of a deal is some surface rust? I don't really know. I don't have an answer for that. Some people said, well, what does it matter if it's rusty? I don't know. Maybe, I guess the problem is in the future, if you're trying to disassemble everything and it gets really rusted up, that's going to be a real problem. So because it's an easy fix, we're going to go in, clean, re-lube it, and do the things I talked about. So let's get started. So in my other video, I showed you how to take off the wheel, take off the brake caliper, take off the rear mud guard. So you need to do those 3 things before you get started. And then the next thing we're going to do is drain the final drive oil. So let me show you how to do that. So to drain the final drive, the first thing you want to do is take off the fill bolt, which is here. Now, the reason you want to take out the fill bolt is because if you drain the fluid and for some reason the fill bolt is stripped or rusty or whatever, you're going to be screwed. So take that out first anytime you're doing any sort of differential or oil change. That's good advice. The second thing is the drain plug is down here on the bottom, which is really hard to film, but it's down here on the bottom. It's a size T45 hex. Not hex, T45 Torx. I'm sorry. All these things are Torx. Now, on first glance, the fasteners look like they're Allen heads, but they're not. Do not use an Allen head. Make sure you're using Torx. Now, another thing, I went to do this, and what I noticed is the fill bolt and the drain bolt are different sizes. The fill bolt is smaller, it's a T40, and the drain bolt is a T45. I went to try to use the same one for both, because assuming, they're going to be the same, but they're not. So be careful, don't strip anything out. So what we're going to do is go ahead and position our drain pan and get the oil drained. Now mine looks, pretty nice. It's not dark or anything, but gear oil is super cheap and super easy to change, so why not change it? I think the drain interval on this is, I don't know, check your manual on your specific bike, but I think it's maybe every 12,000 miles BMW is recommending it, but again, it's cheap. Maybe just do it every oil change. Someone pointed out that this oil is under a lot of heat and stress on the final drive, so might as well change it out. Also, it's a small quantity of oil, so something good to change out. So we'll let that drain and then we'll go from there. Okay, so we got our final drive oil drained out, gave it 10-20 minutes to drain out. I'm going to go ahead and put the drain plug back in so it doesn't leak out while I'm working. The next thing you've got to do, oh, and I forgot to mention, you've got to, just like in my other video I showed, you've got to take the speedometer sensor out of the hub and hook that up here, set that aside. Also remember to bungee your brake caliper out of the way. So now we've got that all done. I've loosened up the pair lever bolt here. We're going to go ahead, and another thing I missed in my other video was you need to put Loctite on this when you reassemble it. So we're going to take this out. When we take this bolt out, the drive again is going to drop down, and then we're going to be able to deal with our splines and then get it back together. So stay tuned. So yeah, you need to pull the boot off here from the swing arm side. It just pops off. It has these clips, and now we can start to lower down our final drive. Okay, see, there we go, and then it just supports itself there. Okay, so we'll go ahead and I'm going to get this cleaned up. I'm going to get the old grease off, clean up this dirt you see. I'm going to lube it with the assembly, Moly assembly paste, and then I'm going to grease the boot with some grease to help it better seal and put it back together. Now the same thing, go watch my other video for the alignment process. You need to use a piece of wire, a piece of soft wire cord to hold up the drive shaft while you lift the final drive back up into place while rotating the final drive using the brake disc or whatever, and rotating it into place gently. Do not, pound it into place. My other video was kind of a joke, but people didn't get the humor. So we'll do that and then we'll come back. Alright, so we've got the Moly assembly paste spread on all the mating surfaces and everything I could reach in terms of the drive shaft and the splines. I've got regular grease on the mating surfaces between the rubber gasket boot thing and the swing arm. The idea behind that is to prevent water intrusion, which may be causing the problem in the first place. The only thing left to do now is use the wire to hold the drive shaft up and get the darn final drive thing aligned, and hopefully this time it won't take me quite so long. I'll report back when I've got that done. Okay, so I got the final drive mated back up to the drive shaft. Once you get it mated back up, stick in that pair lever bolt to hold it up in place. I got my boot clipped back into the swing arm. I got my speedometer sensor wire inserted back. I did notice that with the Moly assembly paste, I don't know if that was the difference, but for me this time it popped right in. I mean, literally there was a difference when I did this last time of spending like 45 minutes trying to get it mated back up and cursing all the way. This time it's slipped right back in. I rotated it a tiny bit using the hub, and it just slipped in, and then it was no problem. I don't know if that's because the Moly assembly paste is so much slipperier. It's not even a word, so much more slippery. And I don't know. But anyway, went back in easier, so great news there. So now we're going to refill the final drive, and then we'll be good to go. So I'll show you how to do the drive now. Okay, so we're ready to refill the final drive. Now, make sure you put the speedometer sensor back into the hub because it'll leak out from that hole if you don't put that in. So you got your drain plug back in, you got your speedo sensor back in. So the method I like to use, and there's a lot of different ways you can do this. You can use like a syringe with a hose, you can use different pumps. So there's different methods, but what I do is I go, and when my wife's not looking, I steal her Pyrex glass measuring thing, put in 180 milliliters worth of fluid. I go a tiny bit over the 180 just because I know there's going to be a tiny bit left in the turkey baster. That's the other thing you need, is get your turkey baster too. Now, I don't recommend using this to do your Thanksgiving turkey after you've used it for gear oil, but that's up to you and how you want your turkey to taste. The other thing you'll need is some gear oil. I don't want to get into arguments about the gear oil. I mean, I know people have opinions. Should you use the BMW gear oil? I think it specifies a GL5 spec 75W90 gear oil, so that's what I'm going to use, a synthetic oil. I'm not going to use the BMW stuff because the dealers are very far away from me, and frankly this is cheaper and easier, and I think it's fine. So what I'm going to do is use the turkey baster to insert the oil into the final dry filler hole until I've put in all 180 milliliters, and then I'm going to seal it back up. So a few things here. You can do a better job than me of getting this in. I dribble a little bit, but basically you just draw up the oil with the turkey baster or the syringe or whatever you have, and put it in. Try to catch any extra like this. If you're careful, you can do this without hardly spilling any, but I'm not the neatest mechanic in the world. So you just keep doing this until you get all 180 in there, and judge how much you kind of dribbled out and then maybe add a tiny bit extra. Okay, so we've got the 180 milliliters of final drive oil back in the final drive. I put back in the fill plug. Make sure that your fill plug has a crush washer on it. In case it fell off somewhere along the line, make sure you've got the crush washer. Got that tightened back up. Clean up any oil or anything you spilled. If you think you got any grease or grime on your brake rotor, now's a good time to spray that off with some brake cleaner. Get that cleaned up with some clean paper towel. And then really after that, it's just putting back on the wheel and the brake caliper and the mud guard, which I showed in my last video, and then you're done. So I hope this was helpful as an addition to my last video. I apologize that I missed these points in my first video, but it was the first time I did this. Now I have done a lot more reading and research, and these are the things that you needed to address.